I would like to welcome you at the first keynote of our conference that will be provided by Mr. Jyrki Katainen. Let me introduce Mr. Katainen a little bit. He's the president of SITRA, of organization that is dealing with the future, but he may say also something more about this. Before his appointment as president of SITRA, Mr. Katainen was the European Commission Vice President for Jobs, Growth, Investment and Competitiveness, broad portfolio. Then he was also a Prime Minister of Finland and Minister. During his 15 years as a member of the Finnish Parliament, he has chaired the Committee for Future, among other appointments. SITRA is the institution, is organization that wants to share the ideas and to reach a wider international audience. Mr. Katainen has a special interest in transforming the market economy so that it complies with the principle of circular economy and sustainability. So the organization is focusing on this task. And he also wants SITRA to stimulate debate concerning the forces that will shape our future. So it is very much fitted into our conference, and I would like to welcome you from Helsinki. Mr. Katainen, please, the floor is yours. Just to say maybe a little bit of technical explanation. We will have a speech by Mr. Katainen of some 15 minutes, and then we will go into the discussion. So it is not very classical keynote, but it is a keynote that is adapted to the online format of the conference in order to make it dynamic as much as possible. Please welcome once again, and the floor is yours, Mr. Katainen.
Thank you very much, Andre. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me a chance to participate in this event. I'm very glad and honored to be part of this program. First, I have a special relationship to Ukraine as I'm a godfather of half Ukrainian little girl. And second connection is that my wife and my daughter are football players, and they are very interested in World Cup qualifications. And now we have learned that Ukraine and Finland belongs to same qualification group prior to World Cup. So there will be two first matches of our qualification groups are in Helsinki and in Ukraine. So that's the basis for this debate. So as Andre already explained, I'm president of SITRA, which is think tank, but also experimentation tank. So we do a classic think tank work, but we also do pilot projects and experimentations with private sector, with municipalities, and with the public sector, generally speaking. And we are very well connected to international networks. We are doing some consultation with international partners, but also want and try to influence, for instance, the EU policies when it comes to data economy, digitalization, or circular economy. So SITRA is politically independent, even though we are under the Parliament of Finland, but they don't interfere. The Parliament doesn't interfere to what we are doing. They are accepting our budgets, and we are also financially independent in the sense that we have our own balance sheet, and we use the dividends of investments to finance our activity, which is roughly speaking 30 million euros per year. So, ladies and gentlemen, I was planning to concentrate mostly on, in my introduction, mostly on circular economy. And then in the debate part of this discussion, I'm open and ready to discuss on whatever the issues the audience want to discuss with me and answer questions. But the reason why I want to concentrate on circular economy is that the circular economy will be one of the biggest drivers in the world economy in coming years. And also because municipalities and local authorities can, and they already now play a crucial role promoting circular economy businesses. So that's why I wanted to raise this issue. This is also a very topical subject in Finland currently, as many municipalities are key partners for industrial companies or other entrepreneurs who are promoting new business models based on circular economy. So if I started just giving a little example what circular economy means, it's, for instance, how long we could keep raw materials in the loop. The fact is that in global level, only 9% of all raw materials which we take for our use stays in the loop, and 91% are used only one time. So 91% of all the materials exploited end up to landfills or to incinerations or to oceans or to nature. So it doesn't make any sense, because to use or to dig some minerals or exploit other raw materials cost money, and the raw material is valuable, and it doesn't make any sense to use it only once we have taken it for our use. So that's the basis for the circular economy. For instance, in the case of plastic bottle is made of oil. What happens to it after you have emptied the plastic bottle? Does it end up to rivers or seas or to nature, or does it end up to landfill or to incineration? If it does, we throw away valuable raw material. In other words, we throw away money. But if it goes to recycling or to reuse, it keeps the value. So it makes more economic sense. Once paid oil stays in our economy, and it doesn't burden our nature and human health. As we know that plastic pollution, plastic waste is dangerous from many perspectives, but one example is that a big amount of plastic is ending up to our waters, and once it degrades, it becomes microplastic. And for instance, fish eat microplastic, and the humans eat fish later on. So plastic ends up to our body, and it's dangerous. There are some estimations that by 2050, if nothing changes, there are more plastic in the oceans than fish. So we have to do something in terms of sustainability, but also from the industrial competitiveness point of view and productivity point of view. Circular economy, as I said, will be one of the biggest drivers of the economic growth, GDP growth in coming years, partially because consumer demand is changing to this direction. There are increasing amount of consumers of us who are demanding more sustainable products. Also, one driver of circular economy is resource efficiency and material efficiency. And it's the way to improve businesses and industries' productivity. Also, there are increasing number of existing companies and industries which are changing their business models to become more circular and not linear. Even though private sector is leading this development at the moment because of the consumer demand, public sector plays an important role. It can be an enabler to boost circular economy. Both government in the EU is also a big regulator, but also in municipality level. One concrete example of public sector's role comes from my country, Finland, where, for instance, in plastic bottles and in aluminum cans, we have a deposit scheme. Every time when I buy a beer can or a bottle of lemonade, I pay, let's say, 15 euro cents per bottle as a deposit, and I get the money back once I return the empty bottle to the shop. And this has led to the situation where more than 90% of plastic bottles and aluminum cans are returning, and they end up either to reuse or to recycling. And this is profitable, especially when we look at the aluminum cans. It's profitable business for can producers because using existing aluminum consumes some 90% less energy than using virgin aluminum. So there is pure business logic behind why this system functions, even though legislators, the government has initiated some decades ago this model. The same model exists in many other countries too. European Union legislation is also one significant factor boosting circular economy in Europe. The EU has a new waste directive, waste legislation, which says that by 2025, 55% of municipality waste should end up recycling. And by 2035, 65% of municipality waste should end up to recycling. So it forces to improve waste management, which is usually in the hands of local authorities, municipality decision makers, but also it enables new businesses to arise once the secondary raw materials are coming to the into market in larger scale. According to this legislation, there are some separate collection clauses which says that, for instance, textiles, bio-waste, and paper, metal, plastics, and glass must be separately collected in order to make it easier and more productive to deal with different waste streams. For instance, 2020, 70% of demolition waste should end up recycling. And demolition waste represent the biggest amount of waste we have in Europe. So public sector can create new market for circular economy. So there the regulatory side is very important. I give you some examples of concrete projects which have been successfully run in various municipalities and countries. One interesting example of circular economy comes from the Netherlands, where the Ministry of Defense, Dutch military, announced a public procurement project where they were purchasing soldier clothing for soldiers, and one of the conditions in these clothes were that they must be made of recycled textile. And you can imagine that the amount of clothes the military needs annually in Netherlands is huge, and therefore this public tender was very big enabler for boosting recycling textile or recycling clothing business and industry in the Netherlands. This is just one good example. Public procurement, public tender is a very useful tool which can be used by local authorities also to boost new business models. It's not subsidizing anything, but it's just gives opportunities for new business models in various sectors. So circular economy is much more than just waste management. Industrial circular economy, of which this Dutch example was one, but industrial circular economy is boosting also. For instance, heavy-duty vehicle producer, Finnish heavy-duty vehicle producer Valtra, which is producing, for instance, tractors, has a business model where they sell the tractor, but as part of the tractor, they lease gearbox. Why they lease gearbox? They want to lease or rent the gearbox because it's the part of the machine which is which does not last for ages. They last for many years, but after certain amount of use, you have to do something to gearbox. And this Valtra wants to get the gearbox back because they want to refurbish it, they want to fix it, and then they sell it again. So basically, they need less virgin material, less metal, less other components which are crucial and critical to gearboxes. And once they fix the gearbox, it is as good as a brand new, and they can sell it again for the cheaper price for the consumer. So this is part of the business model today. And this is purely circular economy. There are also some other examples. For instance, quite well-known global company Philips Lighting, which is producing lighting elements and bulbs for households and businesses. One of the business models is that they are, again, leasing or renting, if you wish, light instead of selling individual bulbs. The idea behind is that a company or municipality can buy certain amount of light instead of certain amount of bulbs. And when the organization buys certain amount of light, the company is taking care of maintenance, they are taking care of energy bill, which gives incentive to company to produce as energy efficient bulbs as possible. And part of their business profit is coming from the secondary market of broken bulbs. For instance, glass and aluminium, which are usually used for the bulbs or lighting elements, they sell this material to other producers. So part of the business profit is coming from the secondary market of secondary raw materials. Next, I will tell you some concrete examples of municipalities. My organization has been promoting circular economy amongst the Finnish municipalities, and there are some smaller scale but well-functioning examples what the municipalities have done. In some municipalities, they have been working very closely with local industries and created, for instance, industrial symbiosis projects, meaning that once one industrial company is producing some primary products, there are always byproducts or waste, if you like. But this waste can be good raw material for another companies. And municipalities have invested in certain type of infrastructure, or they have used the city planning as a tool to build whole ecosystem where different types of companies can benefit from each other. But there are also some smaller scale, close to citizen type of examples. For instance, in one Finnish company, in one Finnish municipality, they were dismantling old wooden buildings. But big amount of raw material, this wood, timber product, was in primary shape. And the municipality allowed people to use this timber product for their own good. So it does not cost anything, but timber product got a new life in new places. Also, in the city of Pori, there's a special project, municipality-wide project, to address waste food from schools. Utilizing surplus food from schools as food aid reduces food waste generated by the city's operations and creates common ground rules for the city to utilize the loss. School serving losses have become apparent as the amount is regularly assessed and the surplus ends up being edible. First 4 years, 24,000 free meals have found a new customer. In the city of Turku, they have a project to recycle furniture. They have implemented a furniture recycling pilot to aim of which was the increased efficiency of the circulation of unnecessary furniture between the city's units. The system is based on a website to which city units can easily add the unnecessary furniture and craft material using a mobile application. The products in the system are visible to everyone in the city network and can be ordered to any unit. The application also shows furniture to be recycled, allows furniture to be recycled without having to move all surplus furniture to a centralized warehouse, which reduces the need for transportation. And finally, in the city of Jyväskylä, they promote more sustainable modes of transport and a denser city structure through zoning. The city has made it possible to reduce parking spaces when the property commits to the introduction of a shared car service. This will contribute to the spread of car sharing services, the sharing economy, and the spread of light traffic. When you don't have your own car, driving is likely to be reduced. So there are plenty of examples, both industrial applications on circular economy, but also very down-to-earth type of good practices in many villages and municipalities. Circular economy has endless opportunity. As I mentioned in the beginning, only 9% of all the raw materials which we take for our use end up to be reused or recycled. So, for instance, if you take 1 kilogram of cold ore and 1 kilogram of mobile phones, it's clear that there are more cold in the mobile phones than in the cold ore. So electronic waste recycling is one example of growing business areas. And all this have a strong link to sustainability, sustainable economic models, but also sustainability when we try to address, for instance, climate change or biodiversity loss. So I just want to summarize by saying that circular economy is already now a significant force behind the economic growth, but its role will be even bigger in the future. And public sector can be enabler by providing new sustainable level playing field type of regulation, but also good practices, especially in public procurement, can help a lot to promote new business models. So circular economy is not the second best version of market economy, but it's more sophisticated, more sustainable and more profitable version of the current linear model of market economy. So that's why, as much as this about protecting our nature and reducing CO2 emissions, it's promoting sustainable economic growth. I will stop here, and I'm open for your comments and questions. And as I said in the beginning, I'm also ready to discuss other topics if you wish. Thank you.
Mr. Katainen, for this inspiring input. I mean, it's reality is coming, and reality is the future, and reality is then the circular economy. This is what probably should be the message. Just for the people that are watching or listening to us, please, you're invited to ask the questions. The questions you can put through the various channels that you're watching, either YouTube, Facebook, or You can send it also to the phones of some of our colleagues. Then these questions will be distributed to me or shared with me, and I'll be happy, to ask this question to Mr. Katainen. I mean, we are here now listening to you that yes, we are good consumers but bad citizens. This is what is one of the quotes also of this conference. And here in Ukraine, we are trying to help or to become a better citizen in order to go into the direction of this circular economy. But however, you said you have a relation to Ukraine, your family relations even. But do you think that going towards the circular economy for a country like Ukraine, that is relatively lagging behind also economically, would be the right step? And if yes, but probably you will say, of course, what would be your advice here? I mean, on one side, you stressed that the private sector primarily is interested in the circular economy, but what should be also the role of the public sector, the national level, local level?
Yeah. We know already now that resource efficiency and sustainable business models will be more significant reason for consumers to select certain products, and it's a global phenomenon. So that's why all those businesses who want to sell internationally their products or knowledge are in the same boat, so to speak. So there's no way for bypassing this consumer demand and will. And that's why if a company wants to be in the right side of the history or wants to be at the same level as their competitors are, it's better to look at the energy efficiency or material resource efficiency projects within a business, because consumers are selecting products increasingly which are more sustainable. Also, it's a matter of productivity. If you don't need to be dependent on raw material coming from abroad, but instead you can recycle some raw material which are already in your society closer to you than some pieces of raw materials which may come from the other side of the world, you are less vulnerable, and also it makes economic sense, because usually the nearer products or raw materials are cheaper than those which are coming from abroad. What public sector can do, there are basically two major areas which promotes the best circular economy. The first one is regulatory power of public sector. Public sector government can regulate the market as governments always do. And we don't need to make compromises between economic growth and sustainability if we give the market right incentives. For instance, I mean, easy example of this is that we cannot reduce CO2 emissions without private investment, and we cannot force private sector to invest in pure technologies, but we can give incentives. For instance, global agreement, Paris Agreement, where all the countries promise to each other to reduce emissions, it will create a new business environment for private sector. And if we had, for instance, carbon pricing mechanism in place, it would directly increase private sector to invest in pure technologies. So regulatory power which is in the hands of the government, is a powerful tool to reshape the market. There is not circular economy without market economy, and that's why the regulation, whatever it is, must be market driven. So market economy is a fantastic tool, but it's always regulated for a way or another. And we don't need to reduce the power of market economy, but we can give new incentives to it, new regulations to it, and it starts producing whatever we want. And in the case of circular economy, usually the products are more sustainable, both economically and environmentally thinking. The EU is a superpower of circular economy currently. Many other countries, for instance, China, is forced to produce products which, if they want to sell them to the EU market, which applies the EU regulation. I give you an example that already some 10 years ago, EU created a legislation which regulates the energy consumption of TV screens or computer laptop screens. So it means that you can sell your products only if your TV screen consumes certain amount of electricity, not more than what the EU allows. And this has had a significant impact to the energy consumption of the EU. For instance, this legislation plus a couple of other energy efficiency legislations have reduced energy consumption in the EU in 10 years' time as much as what is Italy's annual consumption of energy. So this just shows the power of sustainable regulation. The second example, which is in the hands of public sector, is this public procurement, which I told quite a bit already. So even local authorities can be change makers in this respect, because municipalities and regions are big players when they are buying food, or they are buying clothing, or they are buying electricity or lighting, or you name it. And there the local authorities can set the conditions for these products. As I told the example of Dutch military case, it's a good example of the power of public procurement, and it had a big impact to boosting industry and industrial development, circular economy industrial development in the Netherlands. So this is not rocket science, actually. This is quite a simple thing to do, and it just means that decision makers take the circular economy and sustainability to the agenda.
Thank you very much. We are trying in the House of Decentralization, and you lead already for 2 years, not to use the plastic cans anymore, and trying to go into this direction. How much we are contributing to the circular economy, it's of course another question, but you know, it is awareness raising. This is what is important, you know, that our people are start to think about this, and this is, as you say, then also people in the local communities, the mayors, when they are deciding about the public procurement, they will make a small bullet point, you know, that the material, what material this should be, or how this should contribute to the, let's say, certain circular economy and sustainability as such. I have a question here that is also very much relevant somehow to the Ukrainian circumstances, and this is going like this. One of the main resources of municipalities is land, and one of key policies is land or spatial planning. This is what currently also legislation is going to be changed in Ukraine, and there are big preparations for that. Can the principles of the circularity be applied to land management and spatial policy as well? How would you maybe here go?
That's a very good point. That's a very good point and important point, because local authorities in many countries, I hear it's the same with Ukraine, are in charge of spatial planning. And spatial planning has a big impact to circular economy. There are some good examples in various countries, which I know, where the municipality authorities have used spatial planning for maximizing or for minimizing the need of private cars, for instance. And there are some examples, actually one of the examples which I mentioned before is that due to spatial planning, it was more possible to use, for instance, car sharing services. But also other services can be included to spatial planning. For instance, waste management could be easier. Different waste streams could be used for bioenergy, for instance, or then other companies or some companies could use collectively collected waste streams for their own uses. This extremely interesting area. There are good examples in my country, but also in Sweden, in Netherlands, where city authorities or town authorities have used spatial planning for promoting new type of services, reducing CO2 emissions, but also making waste management more efficient. And in some cases, it has created the whole range of new businesses, which serves the citizens living these well-designed areas. So it's you can make huge difference by using spatial planning for sustainability purposes, and also the materials which are used for instance, buildings can play a huge role. This is very, very important topic.
Thank you very much. I just learned yesterday when I prepared for this discussion, that, for example, Slovene government is now even preparing a project that is called Recycle Space Slovenia, so it is recycling space so it is already becoming quite popular in the EU, and we would like to encourage also our friends here in Ukraine to try to think into this direction. There is now the question from the chat, and it's going like this. What are your recommendations about the instruments to build trust on the local level? We don't have a lot of time. I know this is this is probably a question one could talk quite a long time, but what would be your recommendations here? Instruments to build trust on the local level.
Yeah, trust is like oxygen. You only realize it once it's running out. I think if I should mention one, it's transparency. Because if people can trust on local authorities, if people see everything what local authorities are doing, how their tax money is used, for which purposes it's going to, and what kind of services they are getting out of the public policies. And if the processes are also transparent, and if free media is supporting this kind of process, it's probably one of the most significant way to improve trust. So there are many other aspects and dimensions too, but transparency in everything, so that there is no room for rumors that public resources have been used badly, or there are corruption or something like this. So and also this rule of law type of thinking, the transparency is the most important thing. So partially this is a little bit unconcrete theme, but partially it's also quite technical theme. The more transparent administration you can create, the better it is from the trust point of view.
That's very important, you know, but there could be also the next question, of course, can the transparency be misused? You know, how nowadays we have examples by politicians, you know, who are wrongly interpreting or presenting the data. And you know, it's always, then we are coming to the certain points of different literacy that is to be introduced, and this is also one of the topics of this conference, of one of the keynote speakers. I would like to thank you very much for this discussion and for your input. Your experience of SITRA in working with the local communities in Finland may be very, very important also for us, for Ukrainian definitely, but also for You Lead with Europe project. You know, we are establishing a partnership between Ukrainian municipalities and municipalities from the European Union's member states, because we believe that only city partnerships, municipality partnerships can contribute then to the sustainability of cooperation and of working together. When people know each other much better, you know, then they start to be interested what people from other countries are eating, drinking, how they are living, and then they are also starting business and they are also starting working together. So I would like to thank you very much, Mr. Katainen. Best regards to Helsinki, and happy being with us.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.